Hi everyone, I'm Kat and welcome to my channel, Naturally Beautiful Girl. So today I'm bringing you a review and demo of the 100% Pure Fruit Pigmented Water Foundation. And this is a kind of a newer foundation for 100% Pure. I believe they launched it a while ago and then they relaunched it with different shades. And also when I got this in the mail, I got a little insert in with the box that the ingredient list had also been updated. So I think there was some update to the ingredient list. And I really wanted to try this out for you guys because I hadn't heard many people talking about it. As in really nobody. And Melanie, one of my subscribers, DM'd me and we were talking a little bit about it and she really liked it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot. I wanna let you guys know what I think. I'm just gonna jump right into this. Over the past few weeks, I've tried applying this foundation in a range of different ways, and I finally have concluded that the best way to apply this foundation onto my skin is to use a damp beauty sponge. And I have to say that before I even put this foundation on, I make sure my skin is really moisturized. So I have oily skin and I often, depending on my foundation and depending on how my skin is doing, will kind of vary my skincare routine. And with this foundation, I definitely want to make sure I have a moisturizer on underneath it. I really love the Bristol & Sussex Balance moisturizer, and that is the one that I typically use under this foundation, but I have found that if I do not put a moisturizer on, it can be a little bit tricky to get this foundation blended out. And I also find that using a damp beauty sponge helps get this foundation blended out and gives it the best overall appearance. I found that with a brush, I can tend to get brush strokes left behind with the foundation, and I don't like the way it looks on my skin. I feel like it looks a little bit heavier and cakier than when I use a sponge. I don't know why, I'm just letting you know this. I'm normally not a damp sponge foundation applier. If you watch a lot of my videos, you probably know this, that I rarely ever use a damp sponge to apply foundation, but in some cases it just works the best. And I do have to say this as well, that how you apply a foundation, what tool you choose to use, is really dependent on your skin type, your personal preference for how you like your makeup to look, and also the, for instance, skincare products that you use prior to applying foundation. I watch a lot of other YouTubers and a lot of my friends on YouTube, and we will all be talking about the same foundation, but I'll find that one of them will like to apply it using their hands, but I like to apply it using a brush, and somebody else will like to apply it using a sponge. So you really have to play around to find what works best for you. Even if you particularly like to apply your foundation in one way, don't be afraid to experiment and try a different way if you're struggling a bit with a foundation. And why I'm saying all of this is this foundation was much more matte than I was expecting, and I think you can see that in the application. I was thinking because it was a water foundation, it was going to be a little bit more dewy, a little bit more hydrating, and it wasn't. It's not as matte as some of the other 100% Pure foundations. For instance, their Fruit Pigmented Healthy Skin Foundation is extremely matte. This one is definitely a dewier consistency than that one, but it still is a lot more matte than something like the Ilia True Skin Serum Foundation. And so for that reason, I like to work in small areas, as you'll see, apply just a little bit of foundation, blend it out, then apply some more onto my face and then blend it out. And that helps with these drier, more matte foundations, because if you get too much on your face and don't get it blended out fast enough, it can be actually hard to blend it out. So that is my kind of overall tip for working with a more matte foundation. Also, the consistency of this foundation is very interesting. It's kind of a, I want to say, kind of like a puffy foundation. It's not runny, but it's not like a thick foundation either. It has a very unique consistency. I was trying to think about it, and I really don't know of another foundation that quite has that consistency. So it is unique in that regard. So before I go into giving you more thoughts about the foundation, I do want to give you a bit of information about it. It is $41 for 1 fluid ounce. A fluid ounce is a very typical amount of foundation. If you look at most of your foundation bottles, it's about how much most of them contain. This foundation is vegan and cruelty-free as well. There are 19 different shades of this foundation, which is pretty good for a non-toxic beauty brand. It's not perfect, but it is pretty decent, and there are some deeper shades. It does go from fairly light to what looks like fairly deep. I'm not 100% sure how helpful the deep shades are because I have very fair skin, as you can see. But there are some options in terms of shade. Also, there are a range of different undertones. There are cool, neutral, and warm undertones. So a lot of the foundation shades will come in the same shade, but with different undertones, which is extremely helpful. That being said though, I did still have a difficult time figuring out which foundation shade was my right one. Like I said earlier, I was talking with a subscriber, Melanie, and she and I have kind of determined that we have very similar skin tones. She recommended the Cool One shade, which is what I have and what I applied. I do think it works pretty well. I think it's a smidge pink, but I think when I get it blended out, you really can't tell, and I think it matches the rest of my body and neck very well. There is a neutral one. That one also might be a good match for me. I really don't know. Unfortunately, I don't live near a 100% pure store, nor do I live near any other store that sells 100% pure, so I really can't go swatch and test them in person. So I might be using the wrong shade. There might be a better one out there, I really don't know, but I am fairly happy with this shade match. And I know a lot of you have fair skin like I do, so I wanted to do something that I think would be helpful for you. I have the 100% pure healthy foundation in the shade Alpine Rose, which I want to swatch next to this one for you so you can see how the two shades compare. Okay, so on top I have the 100% pure healthy foundation in Alpine Rose. Down below I have the healthy foundation in Cool One. So as you can see, Alpine Rose is definitely a warmer and bit deeper shade than the water foundation. I do think that possibly having a neutral foundation would have been better, but I was worried to go with that one for this reason that I, along with a number of other people, find the 100% pure foundations to run pretty warm. So I was worried that the neutral would be close to the Alpine Rose shade. Like I said, I can get the water foundation to work. You guys can let me know, but I think it blended out pretty well. And I do like the shade on me better than I do the Alpine Rose foundation. So if you are super fair like I am and have not had the best look with the Alpine Rose shades, I think the one shades in the water foundation do run a bit lighter. Okay, so like I said, this foundation is pretty matte, which I just was not expecting. And I have oily skin, but I found that I do prefer a little bit more dewiness in my foundation just because I like how it looks on my skin. Right now it is winter. This foundation could be one that I really enjoy during the summer because it's matte, but it's not as matte as something like the healthy foundation. But for me right now, it honestly is a little dry. I would prefer something a little bit more dewy, a little bit more hydrating during these winter months. What's interesting about this foundation is it does set down fairly well. I do apply some powder onto it because I always set my foundation with powder because I have oily skin, and also it helps to boost up the coverage a bit. This foundation, I would say, is about a light medium coverage. Like, you can build it up some, but there is a limit to how much you can build it. And what I like to do is where I need a little bit more coverage, I will apply a concealer to, for instance, any acne spots, and then apply a little bit of a tinted loose setting powder on top of it. And typically what that ends up being is my Alima Pure Satin Matte Foundation. So I do like the overall look it gives. My one main complaint about this foundation is I find that it tends to move into the fine lines on my forehead very quickly and very easily. And that was not something I was expecting with this foundation because it is a more matte foundation. I thought, okay, once I get it laid down, it shouldn't really move around as much. But I really do find that it gets into my fine lines. I have to set this foundation very quickly or it will already get into those fine lines. And even once I do set it, it still does tend to get into those fine lines. And that's not something I love. And I don't really feel like I have a lot of fine lines on my forehead, or at least the ones I have, I don't feel like they're that visible, but this foundation definitely does accentuate them. But I do have to say, in terms of long wearingness, this foundation does wear well on me throughout the day. It doesn't break down, it doesn't break apart, it doesn't move around, which are all things that I am concerned about because I have oily skin. And my oily skin will tend to break down foundations and cause them to slip around on my face. So I do have to give this foundation credit for not doing that. I guess my overall thoughts on this foundation is not my favorite foundation. Like, I definitely prefer my Ilia True Skin foundation and my Au Naturel stick foundation over this one, but I also don't dislike it either. One big positive I do have to say about 100% Pure is they have pretty incredible ingredient lists. If you're really concerned about the ingredients that are going into your skincare or makeup products, 100% Pure is really great for that because they really do target using fruit pigments. They target using ingredients from plants. There are really few other brands that are as meticulous about their ingredients as 100% Pure is. So there is that positive going for it as well. I didn't think from reading the description it would be a good one for more oily skin types, but after using it, I do think so. I think if you do have a drier skin type and want to use this foundation, you want to make sure to use a moisturizer underneath it, to lightly powder, don't powder too much. Maybe even use a face oil underneath this foundation and definitely apply it with a damp sponge. I think all these things will make the foundation work better. I really, truly do think that in the summer, I will reach for this foundation more because right now my skin is just dry. It is very cold. It is January right now. I live in New England, so it's dry. The heaters are running when you go outside. The cold wind is, whipping across your face, which is drying your face out. So I think right now is not the best season for this foundation. It could be a little bit tricky to figure out your shade. I've often felt that 100% Pure is not the best with foundation shades. Like I said, often they run a little bit warm. And yes, this foundation does come in a wider range of shades, but it's really hard to get a hold of a sample of it or to swatch it in person. So it would still be very difficult to shade match yourself. It's a pretty decent foundation and I enjoy the coverage of it. I like how long wearing it is. The shade is pretty good. I just wish it didn't settle into my fine lines on my forehead as much, but it is something that I will definitely continue using. And I've been using it for a few weeks now and have been liking it more than I thought I would. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel to see more non-toxic beauty content. And also check out my Instagram. My handle's at naturallybeautifulgirl. And once again, thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye.